this goes. Hello. Hello, hello. Hello, hello. Okay. Okay, people. My name is Ron. My guest today is Jeff Sherman of the band Glass. And he has other things he does, like a solo artist as Jeff Jode, different kinds of music. First, you have Glass, which is a progressive rock band. And he's going to join us in a few moments. I met him back online in 2001 and reviewed a few of his CDs. And then I think it was Baja Prague 2007, I met him in person. And that was pretty cool, you know. And today we're just going to talk about anything that's related to his music. So you might learn a thing or two. Everything here is a work in progress, okay, folks? Can you see me out there? Good, good, good. Okay, well, let's start this up in a little bit.
Okay, I'm ready, Ron.
There he is.
Yeah.
We're live now.
Okay.
And I kind of did a little intro bit, just letting everybody know that who's going to be on the show.
Okay.
And I did notice on your bottom screen, right at the bottom, where it has a name, it has your wife's name. So I don't want people to be confused that I'm talking to a Beverly.
Oh, I know why, because she was the last one. She does Zoom all the time, and she used this computer. So the computer branded her name on it,
Right.
because she used it the last. Let me get one more thing here. I just thought of. I thought of what props to use.
Yeah, this is a brand new show, so it's like I'm learning the ropes too, but it's like I just want the main focus of it is just going to be the music and your stories.
I got it. Well, what I was getting out of my closet, I'm in my studio, my little bedroom studio where I've been since COVID started.
Right.
Where I do my blues show from and stuff. But I have all the Glass archival stuff here and our supply of albums and stuff. And you and I were talking about how long we'd known each other.
Yes.
And this was the album.
Yes, that's
this
the one.
was this original release on our little record label, Relentless Pursuit Records, that we did in 2000, actually. And
yes.
No Stranger to the Skies. I only have a couple copies left, archived. It sold out a long time ago,
Right.
and then Musea picked it up and they re-released it, and yeah, so there's copies of that available, and I have a few copies which I'm selling. And if you don't mind, I'd like to, hawk some of our stuff here during this show, because
no, I don't
quite
mind
frankly, that's the only way that I can get any sales is just by talking it up on Facebook and social media. And Glass is still active, quote unquote, in that we are still making music, still recording, still releasing albums. And we find that to be a great blessing now that we're all in our 60s and reasonably healthy. So, I'm still pushing it. This is the very first Glass album, which is a double album. And for those people that don't know, Glass never had any releases we were a band from the 70s, but we never really had any releases until much later. When the internet got big and selling CDs on the internet got big, then we decided to take our archival material that we'd had, which is about 4 or 5 different demo tapes done in the studio. And there's some live recordings on here, and release it ourselves in a double album set called No Stranger to the Skies. And that's kind of when the second part of our career started. One thing to another. Musea Records got a copy of it and liked it, and they released it. And then the various progressive festivals like Baja Prague contacted us, and we ended up regrouping after a break of about almost 20 years and playing live again to support the albums. So that's kind of what we've been doing. We haven't played live in a while. Our drummer, Jerry Cook, has had to have some multiple surgeries done on his wrists from wrist problems, carpal problems and stuff, not just from playing music, but he's also a house builder, so he's a construction guy, and his wrists have taken quite a beating over the years. So he just got through going through a series of operations on his wrists, and is now recouping and has been recovering. And I just talked to him day before yesterday, and he said, we need time to go into the studio, make another album, and do some gigs. So you Glass fans that are out there who know who we are, you may get a chance to see us play again. It might be like just a West Coast tour or whatever, but
right. So. And I noticed some bands, especially if they either tested negative for COVID, and that they can do like a little, like rent it. I've been mentioning this to a lot of times, that you can maybe rent a studio, and use your credentials of your past,
Sure.
festivals, and saying, hey, do you remember when you saw us at such and such festival? Well, we're going to be doing something live, and and maybe ask for a little money, but like get a studio and have someone,
sure.
Have recorded.
Well, we have thought of that. That's a great idea. We have access to a studio up in Seattle that Jerry Cook has been involved with for a number of years. and we could use that studio easily to do it, or we could do like we did. Excuse me, like we did on our last album recording. My brother built a studio in his basement, and we recorded the album, our latest album, Glass Emergence. It's on Musea as well. We recorded that there. So we might do that. Maybe we'll do like a kind of a low-key studio in the home type of performance. Just, just to get out there and say, hey, we're still alive and still recording music, and
Exactly.
come and listen to us.
Well, it's like, because of COVID, we gotta adapt and, to all the situations, because I mean, I have a few friends out in the LA area that, one of them actually just did a little thing in the park, but it was like everybody was spread out.
Right.
And he did like I think, I don't remember how long of a set, but he did a lot of cover tunes.
Sure.
He's a big Grateful Dead fan, so he did a lot of the covers of that and just different psychedelic music.
I noticed that we have a drive-in. I live in Santa Barbara, and there's a drive-in not that far away from us. And I've noticed a couple bands have had concerts in the drive-in where people are in their cars and or it's socially distanced but they honk if they like something,
Right.
and we could easily probably set something like that up. Right now, my brother lives in Boulder, Colorado. I'm in Santa Barbara, and Jerry's in West Seattle. So anything that we do takes some logistics. We need to plan rehearsals and like that. So, but the future's still wide open. Glass has been very fortunate in that we're all three still alive in relatively good health and still creative. And are, I mean, how many bands from 1968, 69 can say, yeah, we're still doing albums together? So,
Right. Yeah, that's true. And albums where they're not resting on their laurels.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, that's one of the advantages of never having superstardom. There's no laurels to rest on. Everything's a new project. And Glass has always been that way. I know you followed our career. We usually will record and or get together and practice and then record when someone has written a bunch of new songs. We're not ones that are going to go back and try to re-release Broken Oars or something. Now, though we have actually talked about over the years about taking the Broken Oars, which was our first kind of orchestral work, and we have talked about actually doing it with live strings, doing it with a live. It wouldn't be a full orchestra, but it would be. It was originally thought up as a concept piece. It's a half hour long, and back in the day when concept pieces were the thing, and so we have talked about maybe doing a live Broken Oars. Talked about that over the years. A lot of it depends. We're in a new world. We're in a COVID world now. Depends on what we can basically do without getting ourselves sick or people sick. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And like I was mentioning with the last week, my guest last week, that during the COVID time, it's like if someone had a job where now their job has been diminished and they're a musician, part-time musician maybe, and they can devote, you have that opportunity now to devote a little more time to music and possibly writing a little more music, or at least getting ideas, because I've seen a lot of bands that are putting out albums that have, like you said, all the distance everybody in your band is in. I mean, we've got bands like the Flower Kings. I think they have all over Europe, and I think one or two members is in the United States. So it's like getting them all, sending the files and everything like that,
Sure.
But it's like I think the the opportunities to make more music now, especially
Well,
when a lot of people are staying at home, so that
Well, Ron, I'll tell you, Glass is a little bit different than the average band in that we always self-funded everything because we actually started the making part of our careers later on. And I know that every progressive musician is kind of a part-time musician. I mean, they have to have something else to support them. And even though our fans are very loyal, it's not a huge fan base we're not like ELP that can keep, releasing bootleg old recordings and stuff. Our label can't keep doing that because, we weren't that well known. So the audience we do have has been built up over years by people, literally just one friend tells another friend, yeah, there's this band called Glass, and people like you review us, and then people go out and buy it, and the music is of a high caliber, and so it lives on. It really is timeless, and people keep wanting more of it, and as long as they do, we'll keep making it.
Oh yeah, like you said, it's like it's the progressive rock genre now, even though it's prosperous in a way, it's still not mainstream like it was back in the 70s, where it's like you can have ELP and some rock band playing at the same time, on the same bill. And but nowadays it's like, a lot of the progressive rock bands, when they play live, it's usually they'll be supported by another progressive rock band. They wouldn't be supported by anybody else. And so it's like we're in our own little bubble, so to speak.
Yeah.
So it's like, so that's another thing too. It's like, it's so, when I listen back to, or watch old programs, what is it, when they recorded the Cal Jam and things like that, where you had just a variety of music styles on that festival.
Yeah.
And then as the decades going on, it's like everything is just now, if you have a rock festival, that's all you're going to have, or if you do have a multi-day festival, and like I'm not sure if you remember in 1983 we had the US Festival.
Yeah.
And where they had a rock day, a metal day, and a new wave day. And it's like, at that point, I think they were trying now to separate the genres.
Right.
It's like,
well, you know what happened, Ron? What happened was that the internet really produced a huge new explosion to a lot of different kinds of music. And I know that it's been the way that Glass has been able to continue. And because there are people out there that are real fans of, say, progressive music, they go out on the internet and they look for these bands. Like there's a kind of a genre of progressive rock guys that are just totally into the original 70s, what I call the golden era of prog. And that's what they're interested in purchasing. And that's what they tell their friends about. So those of us that are from the 70s, but are still alive and still making music, we have to draw those people into our music, our new music. you know, and that's a classic thing that all artists go through. If you get super well known for a string of hits or whatever, if you're a rock or a pop band, you get trapped into having to play those like forever, and that takes up your time, and you're not writing new stuff.
Right. I mean, you got the greatest hits bands out there now, and then you got the bands like yourself that are making new music. You know, that it's like two different things going on.
Yeah.
It's kind of nice to go to listen to your favorite band, and if they're still around and they're doing a greatest hits tour, you get to relive some of those things. But then at the same time, it's like you kind of want to hear, well, can't these guys do anything new, or is it just they're just gonna be stuck back in 1974?
Right.
You know, they didn't actually, you know, it's like that's why it's weird how some of the 70s progressive rock bands, um, some didn't make it past the decade and some continued on, and then unfortunately I think in the 80s it's um when they were more, I want to say mainstream, but you know, then in the 80s they started getting more underground, where it's like it was no longer hip to be a progressive rock band.
Right.
But there was some bands that were still flourishing, that came out from the 70s. Maybe not some of them that started in the early 70s, but about mid to almost end of the 70s, and they're continuing, but they're evolving and they're actually being true to the definition of progressive.
Right. You know, a lot of it depends on the writers in the band and how strong they were. You know, that's my personal opinion. You know, writing is everything, and you know, bands that had a strong writer, or if they had two or three, then they're going to last longer. You know, bands that had one writer and then he just burned out, and then all they had left to do was flog the old sound. You know, and
Right.
fortunately in Glass we've got all three of us right, so you know, we kind of support each other. You know, as far as we do an album, we never don't have enough material when we record an album, and it has shifted over the years. You know, excuse me. In the early days of Glass, I mean the very early days of Glass, I did about 90% of the writing on bass guitar yet, and then as my brother grew, he got into writing, and he more or less kind of took over. I mean, it was his writing growth of his writing ability that sustained Glass for many albums. And then, of course, right towards the last, I don't know, say 10 years or whatever, you know, Jerry Cook, our drummer, who has always been instrumental in arranging our music, he started writing stuff, very weird stuff. I mean, and you know, being Glass, we just did it. In our last album, Emergence, actually has a vocal song on it that a song Jerry wrote to his wife of 35 years. And Greg and I were like a little doubtful about whether we wanted to put a vocal on there or not. But, you know, why not? I mean, it's his creative output. We didn't want to get to a point where we're telling each other or fighting with each other over what's going to be on the album or not. It's just another growth in the band. Now, I don't know if it'll ever happen again, but, you know, Emergence has a song on here that Jerry wrote, and what's it called here? I think it's called Eternally, pretty sure. Yeah, and then you'll notice on here I have one of, you know, that I do ambient music and kind of experimental music. On the latest album, we have a big piece of mine. Glass, you know, Jerry and Greg said, yeah, let's do one of your ambient pieces. So it's a very eclectic mix that's on this album. People that like the classic symphonic rock are going to love Greg's tunes. The people that like the stuff a little more weird are going to like Jerry's and my stuff. But it's all about the writers. Do you have good writers in the band? And Glass is fortunate enough. Actually, we're better writers than we are anything else, to be honest with you. We were never virtuosos. We just had strong melodies and strong thematic ideas.
Well, there's like in anything, positives, and I wouldn't say negatives, but where if you're a virtuoso, you're expected each time to be on your albums and the songs to be virtuoso.
Yeah.
So, you've already put yourself way high on a pedestal. So if you went ahead and did something melodic, people will be looking at you like, wait a second, you're not doing what we've come to love about you guys.
Yeah, the extreme version of that would be, say, someone like Keith Emerson, who obviously based his entire self on his soloing and his, he was a prodigy. And then when he got the diagnosis later in life that he was going to lose the functionality of that virtuosity, he killed himself. He just said, well, that's it for me. Now, that's why, again, in my opinion, better to have a strong, lasting song and melody than it is to be able to play super fast. Because, I'll tell you the truth, there's always going to be someone who can play faster and trickier than you.
Oh, yeah.
There just
is.
Yeah,
you always see that. It's like in progressive rock and regular rock, metal, any genre, they're always going to try to do it almost in a competition way. And I don't think music should be a competition. I think you should have different styles for different moods, and that's how I do it with the stuff that's behind me. I have various different styles for different moods.
Sure.
And that's why sometimes it does come off snobbish, saying it's like, that's why I say that to people. It's like, don't be just stuck in one style. Listen to many different styles, because you're gonna learn something about yourself in the process.
Yeah.
That's it. That's how I come across about it.
Yeah, everybody has a whole palette of moods. That's why what you're saying is so true. One of the best things, Glass has been reviewed a number of times, and one of the things that a reviewer named Ron Fuchs said about us, I think on No Stranger to the Skies, was that our music was very evocative of the moodiness, I don't know if that's the word to use, of the Pacific Northwest. And only a couple people picked up on that, but it's really true. We grew up in the shrouded kind of, I won't say depressing, but in the cloud shrouded, rainy Pacific Northwest, and that produced a certain kind of music out of us. And it was very astute of you way back then to make that observation. We are artists, and we're just reflective of where we are and where we were. And Glass was very fortunate to grow up in some very beautiful environments. Skagit Valley, Greg and I grew up in the Skagit Valley when we were kids, way up in the mountains, almost like, the Swiss Alps. And then we moved, when we got a little bit older in our teens, to Port Townsend, Washington, which is an incredibly beautiful area, seaport town, Washington State. And that changed our music too. So, we're a product of where we come from, obviously.
Well, I asked this one question of people is, what was your first concert?
Oh gosh, I think the very first rock concert that Greg and I attended was called the Spring Spectacular at the Seattle Center, way back in probably 1967. Oh, well, wait a minute. Even before that, the Beatles. We saw their second to the last performance at Seattle in 1966. And of course, that couldn't be compared to a normal type concert experience with any band. I mean, that was insanity. And then I think the next one was the Spring Spectacular the following year, put on by one of the radio stations, in which they had Jefferson Airplane, uh, 13th floor elevator, the Buckinghams. I mean, there were a ton of half famous and famous bands. We must have seen 20 bands. Merrily Rush and the Turnabouts, Dawn and the Good Times. They were Seattle bands. We saw them. And then I think later that year, we went and saw The Who back in their classic Pete Townsend wearing the British English flag, the Union jacket, and Keith Moon with his great drum set. And that was an amazing concert too. And so those were early concerts. We were Port Townsend's, an hour and a half or something from Seattle. So we weren't shut off from the world. And then, of course, as anybody that knows the Glass Legend knows, on September 6th in 1968, I think it was, we saw an English power trio called the Soft Machine open up for Jimi Hendrix on his return home concert. And that pretty much changed everything for us, because we were rock fans before, but they were so impressive. Their sound was so impressive. And for a band that didn't have a guitar player, just bass, keyboards, and drums, it just opened our eyes. I can remember going home feeling like I'm never going to be the same again. And we immediately started doing songs. Well, first of all, we had to wait forever to get Soft Machine's album, which we did. Practically every song on that album, but then we started writing our own material in that same progressive jazz rock vein. And so I would say the Soft Machine concert was probably the most influential concert for us. And in the ensuing years, decades down the way, I actually got to meet and play with Hugh Hopper at the Prog Band Cometh concerts, and have him record on some of my solo stuff. And also he recorded on a Glass album called Illuminations, which is still available. And we got to actually meet them. And then the famous Soft Machine biographer Mike King became my friend when I asked him to produce and mix the Glass Palindrome album. And he is a good friend of Robert Wyatt's. Yeah, there's Illuminations. I was just listening to that for the first time that's a good album in years. Anyway, Mike King gave me, it was really great the way he did it. He said, he asked me if I was going to be free the following day at around noon my time. I said, sure. He goes, I have a big surprise for you. And then that's all he told me. And then he calls me the next day and says, okay, how would you like to meet Robert Wyatt? And I was like, Robert Wyatt? Because Robert's very famous for being reclusive. He doesn't do interviews with people. He's a very humble guy. And he goes, well, I've talked to Robert about you and about Glass, and he said he has agreed to have a phone call with you. And it just blew me away. I called up Robert the following day, and we had a really nice conversation. Very nice man, super humble. And I told him, I can remember telling him, excuse me, thanking him, for his effect and how important he had been in our lives. And he was totally humble about it. He goes, "Well, I hope that our music did more for you than it did for us."
Right.
Because they famously were ripped off, and they had tons of problems. But anyway, got to meet him, and also got to meet David Allen too during the Progman days. So we actually came full circle. We actually got to meet these guys that had been so influential in our lives. Haven't
Yeah,
met Mike.
I think
Mike.
it's always amazing when you can meet your heroes.
Oh, yeah.
Especially if you're musicians,
Yeah. Yeah, I know. It's like I try to explain, like it would be if you were a painter and you got to got to meet Pablo Picasso, and in person and talk art with them. That's kind of how it was with us and these Canterbury musicians that Jerry brought over here for the Progman Cometh concerts in 2001 and 2003 or 2001, 2002 maybe. Well, for one thing, you find out they're just like you. They're just guys that love progressive music, though they don't like calling it progressive music. That's a term that Hugh Hopper told me it was basically just made up by the press.
Right.
But you find out their tastes and their heroes, like the old jazz guys. I remember having excuse me, I'm belching for some reason, having a long conversation with Hugh about the Motown backup musicians. Names escaping me now. I can't think of the name. Anyway, the rhythm section for the Motown recordings, Hugh and I had a long conversation because he was a huge fan. James Jamerson, the bass player, and Benny, the drummer, and it was cool. It was really cool. It was to see the art cross over the generations between me and Hugh, and pull us together as friends.
Oh, yeah, well, it's just like, I have a lot of musician friends that what they play sometimes it may be different than what they listen to, or their influences. It's just it's like, I want to say a puzzle. It's like every piece is going to fit in. While they won't look the same, it's just when it get the end product is how you do your music. I mean,
right. Well, the funny thing about that, Ron, is that I'll use Soft Machine as an example. They were huge fans of the Miles Davis band. The Bitches Brew era electric Miles Davis band. They just blew them away. But in my opinion, what they took from that experience and that music and made into their own original music was better than Miles Davis. Was Soft Machine Volume 2 is probably one of the greatest progressive jazz rock albums ever recorded. I don't think it'll be surpassed, not in our lifetimes. The playing on it, they took the ideas, some of the ideas that Miles had, but they just pushed it. They added great melodies. Mike Ratledge is an incredible melody writer, and so is Hugh. And they added accessibility in a way to jazz that other bands didn't. The original product, the culmination of their talents, Mike Ratledge, Robert Wyatt, Kevin Ayers, Hugh Hopper, the amalgamation, what they brought as a whole was far, far greater than any single member in that band, which is why I still consider Soft Machine the the greatest progressive jazz rock band that there ever was. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I hear a lot about them, and it's like I've heard some of their stuff on, on YouTube, which I think for me, I like going there and it's like that's where I do my homework. And I when someone like we were speaking earlier before we broadcast, when someone tells me of a band, or I see something mentioned of a band that I've never heard before, or maybe vaguely heard, I always go over and check on YouTube and see if they have a clip, whether it's a studio clip or a live clip, or something, so that I can actually now, okay, let's say for example, like you tell me of a band, and I go and you are just praising them up and down, and I go look and see, and I get to hear it for myself. Oh, okay, now I know why he's praising them, because I can hear it, and this is especially for generations of people such as myself and younger that didn't get a chance, 1967, 68, I was 2 years old, so it's like I wouldn't have known any of these bands. And into the 60s, I I am an actual very late bloomer when it comes to music. I didn't start appreciating it, but it wasn't like as I am now. But I started in the early 80s, and it was my first two cassettes I bought was Queen's Greatest Hits and Classic Yes. And those, I think for me, I won't say progressive, but the more interesting music, because at that time I had no clue what progressive music was. I just thought, oh, this is different than what I hear on Top 40, so I'm going to investigate. And it just, like I said, a rabbit hole. I just kept on going. So but it honestly wasn't until the 90s when I really went deep down,
Yeah.
and I continue going deeper and deeper. And even if it's something that, let's say, a majority of music fans already know of a certain album, and they've been praising it for decades, and I just get into it, and let's say I get into an album in 2020 that was released maybe in 1970, and it's like I'm hearing it with fresh ears, and but the thing is, this is there's no way everybody can listen to everything that's been produced.
Oh, no way.
Though you won't get to listen to, if they gave you a list of 1,000 albums, that some people may have listened to a good majority of them, but not, I wouldn't say every single one of them, unless that's their business, But if a casual listener is not going to have every single album that's been released, past and present,
you mentioned YouTube, and I'm going to do a segue. YouTube's a wonderful thing. It's helped progressive music immeasurably. And because I know I get comments from people that see stuff that I post on YouTube. And I just found in my archival material a couple weeks ago some recordings that I made of Glass playing live when we did our little European tour in 2007. And I had never, the tour ended, we were in debt, we covered for a couple of years. And I had forgotten that I had these. And I got into them, and I found some performances that were pretty good. When you're there, we drove the whole thing, and we drove it in a ridiculously small amount of time. And so you're exhausted. I don't even think we slept the night before we played in Versailles, France. And so it tends to have you be on autopilot. You really, well, that's one reason I recorded it, because I knew I would want to go back and go, oh, that's how that concert was. So anyway, I had 2 performances. We did one in up in Oslo, Norway, at a small club called the Amplifier Club. A really great guy named Per Helg, who ended up kind of saving us on that tour, invited us to play there. A bunch of things had fallen through, and so when I think a day or two before we went up to Oslo to play there, we were down in Amsterdam or something, and I said, I'm going to have to charge you twice of what I said we were going to charge you, because we're completely broke. We didn't even have gas to get up there. And I told him a little bit about these promoters that had ripped us off, and he said, "Hey, no problem, come on up." He acquiesced and paid us more money than he said he would originally. Plus, he put us into probably one of the nicest hotels in Oslo, which was such a relief, because we had been, sleeping in the van, and it just rejuvenated us. And so I recorded it at the Amplifier Club. And even though some of it's a little tough to see because I had the camera back by the board, and it was a small club, it was a very well received concert. And it's the first time Glass had played in front of an audience where all I had to do was say the name of a song and people erupted into applause. They actually knew our music from our CDs on the other side of the world. And I'll tell you, when you struggle like we have to get known, that's a huge thing. And we had people bringing up Glass CDs for us to sign. It was really a great experience. And we'll have that. The audio portion is really good. And you can see how Glass was when we played in Europe. And then the other recording that I have, video I have, is of us at the Palace Versailles. The Theater Montpensier is the 17th century, incredibly gorgeous theater, which really fit the Glass music, the symphonic bent to our music very well. We played there, and we had the same effect. People knew who we were. Plus, the promoter, a great guy whose name escapes me right now, he worked the merch table for us while we were playing, and raised enough money selling our T-shirts and CDs to actually fund us making it back to London, and catching our flights to get home. So both live videos are now posted to YouTube. If you go to YouTube and you do a search on Glass channel, we have a channel there, you will see them. Or you can search on Glass Live Versailles or Glass Live Oslo, and you can see the entire performance. I didn't break it up, but that's just my way of, telling people, hey, we did this. It's out there. It's on YouTube long after we're gone. People are going to discover it, and I love that about the internet and about YouTube. So
yeah, I posted on my personal Facebook page. I posted the 2 videos that you gave me told me about, and once we finish this, I'm going to put some links down below so that people don't have to do too much searching.
Okay.
They can go either while they're listening, they can open up another window and have the music going while they're listening, or they can save it and listen to it at their leisure, whether it be on a small little phone or a 90-inch TV, whatever they got. But it's like, you just can discover so many things on YouTube that you never thought existed, and I should let everybody know that the easiest way to get Jeff has his own, it's called the Jeff Sherman channel. I'll put that link down below as well, so they can go and look at the various videos you have up there too, Other thing is, like you said, you mentioned that you guys might have some music.
Well, here's the deal. We're opening the doors, as we say, to recording another album. And the main thing about when that happens will be COVID. I mean, I'm still a little bit paranoid about flying somewhere. They say it's supposedly safe, but the idea of being in a tin can with another COVID victim coughing and I'm at the exact age where you get sick with COVID, it could be life threatening,
Exactly.
And so I don't take any chances. But that said, we have the mechanics in place. Like I said, it's called Robert Lang's studio. A lot of famous people record there. Jerry's got a connection there. In fact, they're using a bunch of his gear. We could have a place to actually do several things, not only just record an album, but maybe do a live in the studio broadcast like you were talking about. They've got all the gear there to do it. We did some recording there up in Seattle with the late, great Phil Miller and Richard Sinclair when they were up for the Progman concerts. We did some stuff that's never released.
Yeah, that was one show I missed, but I did get to see you. I believe it was Baja Prague 2007.
Actually, we played there in 2001 and 2004. I think.
Okay, 2004. That's right, because I got right up there the poster.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now I got to tell you, it was one thing to hear your music on a CD, and it was another thing to actually see you play your music live. And while Baja Prague, it's in our community, was a big festival, it's not as big as others, but it had good audience. There was a good amount of people from all over the world that were there. So
Alfonso, the guy that Vidalis that puts it on, he's in a prog band.
Yeah.
Called Cast.
Cast. Yeah.
And when we toured in 2007, one of the gigs I booked was a prog festival called Prog Fest in Bund, Germany. And lo and behold, we check into where we're staying, and they're there. Cast is there. We had a great evening with those guys, just eating and drinking and commiserating about life on the road. And but yeah, they have a huge following.
Yeah, my history with them goes back to '96.
Right.
A friend of mine took me down there. It was just in a little club, and it was Cast and two other a South American band, and then a local Los Angeles band called Land's End. And it was just the three of them, and it was just so cool. It was this little tiny club down in Baja, in Mexicali. I don't remember the name of the place, but I think it's also a restaurant. And it was just fantastic, and that was, after ProgFest 93, 94, and 95, that was like, now going into a different country to see progressive rock bands. And then then again, I believe I've been down to Baja Prague in 2002. I think it was 2002, 2004, and 2007. You know, the last one in 2007 that I went to, a friend of mine says, I got an extra ticket. I don't know if you want to go or not, you know, because this was a dark time. And I said, I can go. It's just, I just don't have really the money to pay for that and the hotel room and the food. And he says, well, you just take care of the food, your food, and if you bring money for merchandise, he says, well, you know, he had another guy, and it was like they took care of the hotel, and we drove down, so it was like that was the easy part. So you know, that was the last of the Baja Progs. Because I think I don't remember when his actual last Baja Prog was because he stopped them after a while,
Right.
and
Yeah, I don't know.
which was a shame. But I think it's just like with Greg Walker's Prog Fest. You know, it got the the debt that they were getting
No,
was
I'll tell you,
not
it's an unbelievably huge burden to put one on,
oh yeah,
as Barry Cook learned when he basically bankrupted himself from doing the two Prog Man Cometh concerts. It's just unbelievable amount of work and expense. And even though the Prog fans that do show up are very dedicated and they're wonderful people, it's not huge crowds, you know.
right.
I would say when we opened up for Richard Sinclair, or we were his backup band in 2004, we were in the main club, or not the club, but the theater. And there was probably about 1,500 people there, if that. And that's, you know, Richard Sinclair. I mean, he's a prog rock icon. So, you know, our crowds are focused, you know, it's a very dedicated, but a very opinionated and very, you know, the prog audience is, you know. I'd like to mention also, if you go to my YouTube channel, the Jeff Sherman YouTube channel, that's where I post the glass stuff. There's a lot of videos that I've made. I do a lot of video editing of my own private performances and got pretty good at putting together little music videos. So there's a lot of other videos on there of glass that I've put together that have pictures of glass over the years, set to music, a lot of it never heard before. And there's some interesting things if you're a glass fan. And if you can, people want to check that out and tell their friends about it, that'd be cool.
Yeah. You know, it's like I have to let everybody know. It's like if you honestly, I mentioned it, I believe in the first review I did, No Stranger to the Skies. If you really call yourself a progressive rock fan, you really need to look into Glass because they really, in my opinion, um, are as relevant to the genre as bands like you've mentioned Soft Machine and
Right.
ELP, um, to name a few. They're just you guys are just as relevant to the genre as they are, and you know it's like I listen to your music, um, and then I would go ahead and listen to other stuff, and it's like it's like okay, these guys, I I put them in the on the same level as them. I put you guys
Thank you.
right up there.
Couldn't say anything that would be more complimentary, to be honest with you. The single biggest comment we used to get in reviews, probably in yours included, was the reviewer listens to the music and goes, why why am I just learning about this band now? You know,
Exactly.
why, where, and even to the point where some reviewers have berated the prog rock community and the prog rock reviewers of the world by saying, why didn't you guys discover this band back in the day? Well, the thing is, in all honesty, we didn't have any recordings out there until 2000. So, the early days of Glass, we spent, well, for one thing, we stayed in the Pacific Northwest, which back then was, the grunge scene hadn't even happened. It was all
Right.
pretty standard poppy rock music. So we spent a big part of our lives up there and being ignored, basically. There was no, I call now, looking back, I call Glass the first Pacific Northwest progressive band. There was nobody doing what we did. There were a couple of experimental type projects going on, but nothing in the vein. We were trying to do something. Well, we were following our muse. We were following, we were doing our thing, and no one could relate to it.
Right.
I can remember my dad when Glass had been together for years and years, and my dad gave this bit of wisdom that what we needed to do was get a attractive woman in a go-go girl outfit and white boots and be our front person and be our singer. Otherwise, no one would ever find us, would ever, that's pretty much the way we look at it. Or people that are so out of it when they do see us or whatever. I can remember we did a series of Battle of the Bands back in the early days, and there's always a judge, and they give you a review slips after your performance. And one high school cheerleader judge, how she ever became, this is up in Port Angeles, Washington, she wrote seriously on our review slip, keyboard players should use left hand more.
Oh,
so that kind of became an in joke, for those of you out there who've never heard of us. My brother has one arm, and so yeah, keyboard players should use left hand more. But anyway, Ron, we've been blessed. I've been blessed with the greatest friends. Jerry and Greg have been my brothers, and we've been blessed with being able to forge ahead no matter what year, finding the money from somewhere. A lot of times it was my brother, but we were able to just keep going forward and not having to earn money for the next meal, which is one reason I really admire the Canterbury guys, because they were poor all the time. And one of the reasons they had to change bands so much and stuff was just to make a living.
Right.
Prog musicians are probably, other than black jazz players, probably the most ripped off group of musicians that there ever was.
Well, like you were saying, they have to play in different bands. I mean, you hear, from an audience standpoint, I remember reading somewhere, I forget which musician it was, but they asked him to say, well, why do you have so many bands? Did you get kicked out of the other one? And that you basically answered the question. Why? It's because they weren't making enough money as one band, so they have to do something else with other people. And that's why
you got to understand, that's a very small condensed area. So all these guys, all the guys in Hatfield in the north, all the guys, the musicians that we grew up, Egg, all the ones that we loved, they all knew each other. They were friends. So, they weren't making any money in one band, and they'd get invited to be in another band, and they'd just do it.
Exactly.
It wasn't like, band loyalty, I have to stay, true to this one band. If you're not making any money, you're not making any money. And a lot of musicians, Canterbury musicians especially, but a lot of them were just getting robbed. You know, if you
Yeah.
look in, Graham Bennett has a great book, the definitive book on Soft Machine called Out Bloody Rageous. If you can get a copy of that. In it, Graham has put together, with the help of Leroy Emmerich, a comprehensive list of gigs. You know, Glass was lucky in our heyday if we did a gig a month or 2 gigs a month. Bands like Soft Machine they were worked like dogs. You know, they did hundreds of gigs all over Europe because, you know, you could drive from one gig to another. And that's why there's so many bootlegs of them out there on YouTube and stuff, because they were just constantly playing all the time. And the sad thing is that they didn't always get paid. You know, I don't know how they kept it together, really. You know,
Right.
you know, they're just famously ripped off by promoters and by managers and stuff. It's amazing they
Yeah.
stayed with their music.
And it's also amazing that some of the big names in, you know, let's say in the rock, you know, some of them got ripped off in some way or fashion, you know.
Right.
And but you know, I understand, you know, a band like the bands, you know, in the Canterbury and then Progressive, that they were fell more victim to that than their, you know, their counterparts in the rock genre. You know, in the rock genre, they a lot of them, you know, honestly, uh, they may have started out being true to their sound, but then as the years go by and they start, you know, their record labels are asking them for hit singles, you know, they basically, you know, sell out.
Yep.
And where it now becomes, it's more important. Yes, you need to, a musician needs to make a living,
Right.
but then when it starts, I think when it starts threatening their art, that's where, okay, now it's like if someone were to give you um, a major recording deal today, but they're going to say, well, I want you to add a guitar player and a singer.
Right. Right.
You know,
Yeah, in the old days, the contracts were so bad. Sometimes the band would show up to record, and there would be a singer or somebody there saying, "I'm in the band." And you know, the thing is that we progressive jazz rock musicians or whatever, we weren't obviously in it for the money to start because you find out very quickly that there isn't any money there.
right.
One of my favorite stories is the seminal Soft Machine album, this one that was on ABC Probe that influenced Glass and so many people. Incredible album, almost alive in the studio album. Robert Wyatt himself told me they never got a penny for that. They never got a damn penny well, they toured to support it. That was the album they were supporting when they opened up for Jimmy. And their manager basically kept the money, had them on a little stipend. And, you know, to create a piece of art like this, a timeless art, and not benefit, you know, financially from it's really a sad comment on capitalism, to be honest with you.
Oh yeah, you know, to me, you know, like you guys need to make money, and you need to, you know, to be compensated for your art, but not really at the risk of ruining your art, because if when the money person becomes in control of the band,
Yeah.
it no longer becomes a band, it becomes a business.
Well, yeah, it's disco is what it is. I mean, it's like the most uh, uh, creative times of any artist is the one in which they are leading the way. You can't follow a trend and be leading the way at the same time. And so the progressive musicians, to their credit, basically just said, I'm going to do my music and put it out there, and whoever likes it, likes it. But, you're not going to tell me. That was one of the reasons when we did our deal with Musea that we went with them, is that Bernard at Musea basically told me, he said, you guys have been doing music for all these years. We're not going to come and tell you what to do. We had total control of our albums and have everything that we've done with them. We do all the artwork. We do everything, basically, artwork, music, everything. And that's one reason the quality of glass music has stayed so high, is that the artist is in control,
Yeah, that's the thing. That's really the reason I like music, whether it's progressive or if it's rock music, but I like it when they take the pride in creating their artwork, whether it's a complicated piece or if it's a simple, beautiful pastoral piece, whatever it is, if you take pride in the work, and when you put it out, and then if it sells a lot, then it's like, hey, people want this.
Right.
And I really do think deep down, even the people that don't listen to progressive rock, they want something different, but they're being, without being too cynical sounding, but force-fed what you hear on the radio today. They're being force-fed this, and the music today, in my opinion, it's more background stuff. You could basically turn it on and you could go and do 2 or 3 different things at the same time, and it's not going to matter because there's no substance to what they're doing. It's just a background noise. Whereas bands from the 60s and 70s and 80s, those 3 decades right there, I think were the most creative that we had. And after that, it just became more of an urban myth that it's like, oh, there's musicians that actually create art,
Well, big business took over. That's
exactly.
Whatever business takes over, art gets diluted. And bean counters and businessmen, they shouldn't be in control of art. Most of them have no idea what went into the music that they promote. Excuse me, it is a business, and it's promoted like SpaghettiOs or anything else, But one of the great equalizers, again, is the internet, in that a lot of bands aren't putting up with that crap. Even famous bands, they're releasing music on their own. They're not signing the big recording contracts. They're going out, putting up their own websites, and selling their own music and making as big a profit or not more. And you're not begging. You don't have to get the knee pads on. You're not begging at the label, to do this or to do that. So, the whole dynamic has changed too, Ron. It used to be you'd make albums, they'd make a ton of money or not selling your album, and then you would tour to support that album, get people to buy more albums. Nowadays, it's come around where, with the advent of the internet and the ability of people to download music for free. In fact, this is something Hopper and I talked about, and the guys his age at the time hated, was that, they still weren't making money on their old stuff because people just get it for free. So it pushed musicians and to actually have to tour again for people to know who they were and to make money. The merch table, the album that you're doing at the time, that becomes just an additional thing, and so it's kind of like the early old days of jazz and Motown, and all those guys had to tour around and play all the time just to eat. They got nothing. Those early musicians, especially if you were black, they got nothing. They were sold on the idea by some record company. Well, we'll make you more famous by promoting your music, but it was like your album was a promotional tool. And so many great musicians, old blues guys, I'm into that now. Robert Johnson, those guys, Son House, they didn't ever make money on albums. They just, had their name and their talent sold to other people who made money.
Exactly. And then now, I mean, I keep on hearing from different bands, I mean, they're talking about those streaming sites like Spotify,
oh, yeah,
and Pandora, that any of your music that gets on there, you're getting like almost less than a penny for each song. And it's like, I really think that is criminally wrong, because they're the new what is it they call the new record labels now, where they're ripping off the musicians, and I say, I understand that point, but then also too is I go to streaming sites like that, and also the ones like Amazon Music. I go to there more, because any CD that I buy, pretty much that I buy, they give you an MP3 version of it that you can play on the app. So that's fantastic. And then you pay, and then that's another way of discovering music. But I think that out of all of them, the Amazon Music one is a little more, I guess they're more helping of the artists, even though I don't think they're 100%. I'm still think that they're almost like the lesser of the two evils between them and Spotify. Spotify, they pay you less than a penny, and then I don't know how much they pay you on Amazon. And it's like, come on, guys, just buy the physical CD.
Well, I understand why some record label, it costs a ton of money to promote any artist, and I understand their business point of view, and I understand the new listener. He hears he hears of a band called Glass, and but he doesn't want to spend $16 whole dollars to buy the album. He'll go out and download it on one of the many torrent sites that are out there, and see if he likes it. Okay, I get that. You want to see if you like it before you spend money on it. But then afterwards, buy a damn disc. I mean, artists, a lot of them aren't alive, but bands like Glass are alive. There's a lot of bands our age and maybe a little younger that are still out there making albums. Just support the artist. You know what I mean? I tell people, when I hype our album, like Emergence, a bunch of birds flying, and on the other back cover is that is what the inside of a Mellotron looks like, folks.
Yeah.
Just when I hype it, I say it's available everywhere. You can get it on Amazon, iTunes, or anything. But go to eBay and buy it from us direct, because it's the difference of if Amazon is selling that for I don't know because they call it an import because our label's in France. If they're selling it for say $19, people don't realize Glass gets about $2 a CD when they sell one. When we sell it to you, then we get the money, and all we have to pay is the shipping. So, help out. If you like prog music, if you say you like it, help out the genre. We're not going to be
Oh
around
yeah,
forever. You know what I mean? And even though we'll keep making music, it'd be nice to be appreciated by the largest number of people we can before one of us is gone. So,
exactly. Well, whenever, me personally, whenever I can, I do buy directly the from the artist. Um, and there's been some rare instances where, because let's say the artist is either in England or somewhere in Europe, because of the rate exchange, the CD plus the postage is like almost triple what, you know,
oh
someone
yeah,
like such as myself can afford. I
yeah,
mean,
no,
when the CD alone, uh, um, with the rate exchange comes to $30, and then that's not including shipping.
I
It's
know.
like, it's like, okay, I you need to be able to buy it closer. So it's like, you know, it's a double-edged sword, because where I want to support the artist, but it's like I can't afford that,
I
you know,
totally understand. I totally.
and it's like, and I think a lot of them understand that too. I mean, obviously, someone in England trying to sell to a person, and they'll sell it easier to their area as opposed to outside of their area, in another country. Except if you get these diehard people that they just buy everything that they
Right.
hear about, and those are the people that are amazing. I mean, I can't believe, I got friends that, I got 1,000 CDs here. I have a friend of mine back in California that he has 10,000 CDs, and I forget, I think he said 8,000 records. And it's like, I'm like going, you could start your own music store right there, and it's like, it's just amazing. I mean, there is a lot of music that I still want to get, because I keep on hearing people talking about from the various genres. And it's like, there's absolutely, like we were discussing earlier, there's no way we're going to get everything that was ever released. I mean, you get a good portion of it, but you're not going to get everything.
Well, you're never going to get everything because there are, for every ELP or any or those bands, there's 50 glass bands out there that may have had one local release, and good luck trying to find it. And I kind of chuckle because the early glass stuff, like No Stranger to the Skies, uh, occasionally, only occasionally, I'll see one available on eBay. But they've been out of print, and they're not getting reprinted, so they become collector's items. And I
Right.
had the original glass, No Stranger to the Skies, which you can tell. Uh, well, for one thing, on the spine, there's like a little white area right there. But our original one done in 2000, this is a huge collector's item. I had a friend tell me that he saw one in a shop in like Akron, Ohio or something, some Prague specialty shop, and the guy wanted $360 for it.
Wow.
Whoa. So, if you like a band and you like a certain album, you might want to get it before it becomes an OOP and out of print, because that's very common in progressive music.
Yeah,
And
I've seen
album
quite a few stuff that
released
are.
by a
I
major
look at.
label,
Yeah, I
you're
see quite a few of them, like the different bands. It's like, you know, I forget which was the one that I saw, and it was like they were asking almost $1,000 for this CD, and I'm like going, now, as a collector, for me, if I was going to buy something like that, they're the band members better have signed this,
Yeah.
because then that's where I see. That's where I think it makes the CD valuable. There is if you get all the members to sign your CD,
Right.
Then now that has become a collector's item.
Right. Right.
And I think maybe a half dozen that signed my CDs, that I bought from them, at the various prog fests,
Right.
and they were from the West Coast ones that I went to, and to the two East Coast ones I went to. It's really, to me, I know some people get their things autographed so that at a later date they can resell them for
Right.
outlandish prices. But for me, I get things autographed because that's going to basically, in a way, that's a fixed point in my time where I can go
Sure.
back, I can look at it and say, yes, I remember that, and I remember buying this because all the guys signed it of the
Right.
band,
Right.
and it just makes things a little more personable
Right.
for me. I wouldn't dare to ask anybody to sign uh, my CDs or movies or whatever. If they do that, then to me that means more than if I have to beg them to do it.
Right.
Right. So it's like it's always a pleasant surprise when I get uh, a CD in the mail from a band and they sign it, and it's like, you know, anywhere from a basic thanks and then their signature to a nice little note. I think it makes it the connection between the band and the audience there.
Well, the truth of the matter is with any amount of greatness comes some humility. And the nice thing about the progressive genre is that most progressive music musicians are humble people. I mean, we're people that have, we're much more humble. You don't see that kind of arrogance, and we're happy to sign stuff. I'm always honored when somebody asks me to sign something.
Oh yeah,
I mean, it is a connection that's being made. Well, Ron, it's been about an hour and a half, and I got something to do at 2. So I want to thank you for.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time out.
Oh, you know me, I never run out of words. I always have something to say. And Glass has always appreciated you from the old days. You've been with us since the beginning. In fact, you may have been the very first, or I think the second review anybody ever did online.
Right. I think that was in 2001, just as I was getting off the ground there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, well, again, I thank you very much for taking the time to talk with me, and it was a very insightful conversation. I always enjoy your stories on your Facebook page, so it's like to hear them live is even better, because then I get to hear it,
Yeah. Well, you and I, we go way back. I mean, we've traded stories and talked about progressive music. I can remember a particular time back in 2004 when we were hanging out with Hatfield in the North, and you and I got a chance to spend some time together. And of course, we were always talking prog music. But I knew then you were a good guy. I mean, you were, because you have your own humility, which is endearing. Some reviewers aren't that way, but you've always been very humble about that.
I see myself first as a fan, a music fan, a music lover. I've never claim to be an interviewer or a reviewer, but I think my style was basically what the average listener is going to tell you. They're not going to be, I never, like I said, I never claimed to be a journalist, but I wanted, I thought that my point of view was something different than what everyone is always expecting.
Right, right. Anyway,
So,
you're a good friend, and anytime you want me to come on in the future, just let me know. Give me a day notice, and we'll continue our ongoing discussion. I do appreciate you publishing the links to my YouTube, and you can publish a link to my Facebook if you want to. I
okay.
love hearing from people. I love hearing how my music and glass music touches people, because really that's what we do it for, and it certainly isn't for any vast amounts of money.
All right. Well, thank you again, and I'll talk with you soon.
All right.
All right.
Take care, my friend.
You too.
By the way, you're looking really good, Ron. I
Oh,
was
thank you.
quite worried there for a while, and
Oh,
but
yes.
you're looking good. You're looking good.
Yeah.
Take care.
All right, I will. You too.
Be safe. Wear a mask.
Yes, of course. All right. Bye-bye.